Welcome everyone. I'm CGTN's Elaine Reyes, and we have partnered with TechCrunch Disrupt 2025 in San Francisco to bring you this very special discussion today on China and the future of global AI. I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel. First of all, we have Rui Ma, founder of TechBuzz China. Rebecca Fannin, founder of Silicon Dragon Ventures and author of the new book, The New Tech Titans of China. And finally, we have Sajad Syed, chairman of the Pakistan Software Houses Association. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have a lot to get to, but first we'd like to look at AI for global good and the theme of public impact, development, and social value. And Ray, I'd like to begin with you. We know that AI is being used more in public health, agriculture, disaster response. We see it around the world. How can China and other countries work together to maximize the positive impact of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that specifically with AI, Chinese developers have been doing a lot of open source models, and I think that is probably the single most impactful thing that the Chinese technology community has contributed to global good, because open source is obviously much cheaper and allows developers all over the world to be able to utilize the models and customize to their needs. It also ensures security because you can run your own models instead of hosted on perhaps a foreign country's server if that is of concern. But overall, I think we can see that just the cost advantages is allowing particularly countries in the global south or developing countries in general to experiment with AI in ways that would be prohibitively expensive for them if they were to use the models, for example, from Silicon Valley that are closed. And I see that overall across multiple technologies. We take investors to China to see deep tech companies up close, and it's not just AI, but EVs, flying taxis, autonomous driving. Many of the technologies are priced at a point that allow, because the Chinese market, the revenue potential and the willingness to pay is different from a developed market like the US. So therefore, the goods and services that are produced are much more appropriate for the rest of the world economy.
And Rebecca, I'd like to get your take on that, but also your thoughts on whether you think that there's been enough cross-border collaboration where you've seen social or economic benefits, especially in some of those emerging markets, developing countries.
Right. Well, I think China's influence into the global south is being felt quite strongly these days. And I think that's a switch from maybe just 5 years ago. And this could be because of AI spreads so rapidly. It's able to go from one country to the next easily. And so the other aspect of it is the open source platforms are able to travel very easily cross borders. So I think we are seeing more a beginning of collaboration and cooperation with AI throughout the global south.
Sajad, what are you seeing right now as you've been traveling the world? You've been to so many places just in the last couple of weeks, but from your perspective in the global south and from your travels, what have you noticed?
When it comes to the Chinese models, what we can see the Chinese approach to AI is very well suited to Global South in terms of model optimization, and that's where they work for. And in Global South, where the compute power is extremely expensive and unaffordable, so the Chinese model jives very well with our socioeconomic conditions. And that is why we see a lot more adoption going in that direction. And we also see that within China, the utilization of AI within society, within healthcare, is significantly more that we see compared to the West. So I believe Global South will learn a lot from the Chinese model, from their use cases. It will continue to happen because the integration, it sort of is more in tune with that culture and is frankly more affordable. So that sort of makes it more attractive for the South, and that is what is uniting them. So unless there is some changes that we see coming in from the global North, we see that adoption increase over time and not decrease over time.
Are there some examples that you can give us that you've seen?
So typically, if you see like around from where I come from, in healthcare, for instance. So in defense, of course, there is Pakistan and China work very closely. But in healthcare, we are seeing a lot of companies getting adopted. In government, in security, Chinese have done wonders in terms of managing cities, smart cities and all. The way Chinese smart city technology is right now way ahead of everybody. And also we are increasingly seeing Pakistani AI companies increasingly using data centers of Huawei and others, because those are the only ones they can afford. It's not whether they want to, they don't have a choice in the matter. So we are seeing, and plus, in certain cases, there are certain sanctions on most of these countries, on NVIDIA chips and others. So again, they don't have a choice but to go in that direction. So we are seeing an increasing utilization and adoption of those models. Having said that, sitting at the crossroads of East and West, we are also seeing Pakistan is in a very unique situation where we get the best of both worlds. And we are seeing a very interesting phenomena approaching where we can learn from both models, the North model and the South model, and come up with extremely unique solutions. So recently I saw a company which had all these different AI models debate. So they had a ChatGPT debating, a DeepSeek debating, a Grok debating, whatever, and then a super AI to actually learn from all of those sort of responses and come up with a further optimized solution. So that is the kind of area that we are seeing coming, which are very unique. So very interesting coming. We have use cases coming in agri-tech, for instance, wonderful use cases coming, health tech. And plus there's a lot of data. There's no shortage in terms of digital data that we see coming out of China and Pakistan. It is amazing, you know, the kind of data they can collect and the kind of AI models they can train. So we are seeing the benefits of that.
Rebecca, I see you nodding your head a lot, so I'd love to get your thoughts on what was said just there.
Sure, I'm just thinking about how advanced the application of AI is in China and these other markets. And it's more advanced than in the Western nations. And I'm thinking as an example, autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles. China is dominating in these areas and innovating in these areas. So it's interesting to see this application really driving it forward. And he mentioned the smart city. I think that's another area, is smart traffic patterns, all kinds of AI uses that are not so widespread in the US, or not so accepted. They're considered more unusual. But China is very digitally savvy, and these markets are very digitally savvy, so they can get the uptake quickly.
And Ray, any trends that you've been noticing along these lines if we're staying and looking at social value, public good?
Well, I think if you take a Western lens, a lot of AI is taking away jobs, but I would argue that many of the jobs that we're now outsourcing to AI, to robots, are actually jobs that are almost like burdens that would be much better off if we left it to machines. So for example, in our recent trip, we just visited an EV factory, and it was very obvious that the production lines, you know, this has been greatly reported, are increasingly automated. And so the workers, they're still workers on the line, but they're more monitoring the robots instead of physically placing themselves in harm's way, right? Because you're dealing with very large objects, you know, car doors and engines and whatnot. And these machines can obviously also be calibrated to be very precise.
I'd like to turn our attention in our conversation now to technology, research, and capacity building. And Sajad, how can countries in the global South partner with China when it comes to research, training, and AI-enabled solutions to accelerate development? I mean, it seems like we're seeing technology, especially within AI. I mean, it's lightning speed. It's hard to keep up. But what do you see there as far as collaborations in helping some of these countries stay on pace?
So, very good question. I think the collaboration needs to happen in 3 dimensions. So there's people, there's process, and then there are platforms. I think these 3 axes, it has to be done in all 3, on all 3 axes. Within people, of course, the research institutions need to collaborate with each other, and we are seeing the beginning of it. And like most economies, initially it starts with defense and public security, and then it goes on to more sort of B2B and then B2C sort of areas. So the people-to-people contact in terms of universities, we are seeing in the number of Pakistani students going into China significantly increased to do their degrees, to get their bachelor's and master's, and we're seeing reverse of that also. Historically, Pakistan has had great engineering background. We had a space program in the 60s, believe it or not, right? So we're seeing a lot of that. Tech companies and organizations collaborate in manufacturing and all that. So we are already seeing that. In terms of processes, both countries need to really learn from each other, especially from China, in terms of their AI adoption, because they've done an amazing work in their city management, in their Industry 4.0, in spite of having historically China competed in low labor costs and a lot of labor, a lot of trained resources, but now it's no longer cities. They have these dark factories now where they have no employee. They just switch off the lights. They don't need lights anymore, right? So a lot of that around the process, GovTech is very strong in China. So a lot of those countries can actually, Global South can learn from China how they improved their citizen services by leaps and bounds by adopting AI and latest tech. And third around is platforms.
Rebecca, what are you seeing in terms of maybe, when it comes to the CEOs and the startups and investors in that space and the collaboration cross-border to make sure that some of these developing countries are keeping up?
Well, one thing is that whoever leads this is first to the market, tends to be the leader and the biggest one. And so if you look at the Chinese tech titans, they have influence not only within China, but outside of China into the whole region. And they have spread their wings throughout the whole region, not so much into the Western Hemisphere, but definitely into the Global South. So in terms of those tech titans, it's not only them, it's the startup environment as well. And these tech titans are actually creating and investing in their own startups and investing in others, other kinds of startups. So this AI trend, all of the bot companies, the Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, are all investing heavily in AI and in their own models. And they're also investing in startups too. So the AI patents in China is huge, almost on par with the US. And the investment spending on AI in China is also almost on par with the Western world or the US.
Ray, what do you see? Because I know you've had various roles in that space, so you have a lot of different perspectives you can draw upon.
Yeah, well, I'll say 2 things. One is, of course, Chinese companies are increasingly going global. We actually just published the State of Chinese AI Applications 2025 report yesterday, and it's very obvious. You can see that while most of the Chinese AI companies are still focused on the domestic market, of the almost 1,000 companies that are being tracked, vast majority are still working on the domestic market. There is a very healthy percentage. I forget the exact number, but it might be like 15% that are working on global as well as domestic markets. But in terms of revenue, you see that the highest grossing, the highest revenue Chinese AI startups are almost exclusively, working on global markets. So, and I think we're year, 3 after ChatGPT launch and all this, large language model mania has taken place. So we fully expect that in future years, more and more enterprising Chinese entrepreneurs are going to try to attack global markets because, by nature, actually, LLMs are really suitable for international expansion because of their kind of agnostic to language. The other thing is, like I said, we take investors to China, and there has been, doing this for many years now, and there's been a significant uptake, I think, in interest.
So one of the things that was interesting, because you just brought up Silicon Valley and DeepSeek, and I'm thinking Silicon Valley was actually in shock about DeepSeek, because it's Chinese. The same old story. China can't innovate, and here is DeepSeek coming forward with this model that's very efficient and made all the valuations of the AI companies from Silicon Valley look extreme. Because DeepSeek didn't take any venture funding. It was all internal funding. So, but what was interesting about it is that it was a shock to Silicon Valley. It was like, oh, a wake-up moment, and it really escalated the competition then. Right. And made everyone more innovative, I think, as a result.
Well, talking about that in international partnerships, do you envision, and I'll pose this to all of you, do you envision China shaping a global AI ecosystem that emphasizes cooperation, scalability, and shared innovation? Is it possible? And I'm not talking about just the global south, but globally. I mean, where do we stand on that? Where do we think that's going to go? Sajad, I'd like to start with you.
I hope it happens. Otherwise, I think the nations are in deep trouble. We should, wherever nations have, whichever technology they've collaborated on, it has ended up improving the very lot of, the whole world. For instance, imagine if the internet had remained part of the information superhighways had remained within Europe or US, right? So I believe, and I hope so, that right now, of course, this is being built in silos. We have a Chinese AI models, and then we have the US ones, and the Europeans are also doing something, and Russians are doing something. Every country is doing something. But over the years, I believe they would come into a standards. We have to very quickly get into defining the ethical boundaries, what is acceptable to us as a society, as a species. Otherwise, I think we're in deep trouble. And I see that happening across the board because I believe initially, like most other new technologies, it will become a national security, local society manner. And then over the years, people will realize that it is in the benefit for us to open up, communicate with each other, to trade with each other.
Right, what do you hope happens, or what needs to happen to kind of move in that direction?
Yeah, like I'm also cautiously optimistic. Obviously, it's great for humanity, right? Yeah, imagine if like certain medical discoveries were not shared, right, with the world or whatnot. That being said, I do think there are lots of barriers. I think that there is a lot of money to be made in AI, so there's a lot of momentum around keeping things proprietary, black box, right? Perhaps it's necessary for maybe policymakers or certain other higher powers with powers of oversight to require some more transparency. I don't know, but I think it's very difficult just based on commercial logic for the players to be that open. So I think that's what we're running up against. It's not really because all the players are acting rationally, and as much as I also do praise Chinese companies for doing open source, and certainly there is a lot of idealism there, but there's also just the fact that they're being rational in the sense that it's difficult to, when you're second, right, when you're the runner-up, to get a lot of attention or credibility unless you do open source and you're radically transparent. So, because otherwise you can't get the yeah, like you can't get the attention, the oxygen. So yeah, we'll see. But let's hope the open, collaborative air spreads.
We do see some changes every couple of years here in the United States, so you never know. When it comes to global AI cooperation, there's also the issues of responsibility and ethics. We've kind of touched on that, and how do you get countries all on the same page when it comes to governance? From your perspective, can China's governance approach help establish the global standards and ethical practices as we kind of move into that direction? Ray, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, we still have a ways to go, but I mean, do you see any conversations taking place or in the future?
Sure. I mean, we went to the World AI Conference in Shanghai in July, and there were plenty of, I think, even U.S. delegates going there to talk about AI safety and such. But I think, I still think we're several steps removed because even the again, American technology community is divided, like very divided on whether or not to even continue researching superintelligence, right? I feel like every couple months, some massive open letter with many, many signatories, very luminaries in this space, banding together and saying, stop development on, AI superintelligence right now. So we haven't even resolved whether or not we want to continue working on this. So there's so much tension there. I'm not really sure people can focus on, developing this within certain guardrails because, there are lots of people calling for just like a very sharp pullback.
I mean, we see, a large multilateral body like the United Nations for the last year now talking about ways that, they could have some sort of framework to, on AI. I just have to mention that.
I'm thinking about one other positive is Elon Musk with Tesla, right, in China, and AI in China. So Elon Musk is a great bridge that we have for now.
Sajad, when we're talking about China's leadership in sort of this AI governance and moving forward, do you think we'll see, and maybe all of you, but Sajad, do you think we'll see countries on this side of it, and we'll have groups of countries agreeing to these things, and they'll go by these standards, and then you'll have everyone else?
Yeah, so what we have to realize is this is one of the biggest social and social disruption that we've seen in a very long time. So the society is still getting to terms on what to do with it. The way I look at it, there are two paths. A very stark look at AI, which we could think of as the birth of a new species. So it's a silicon-based species which is going to sort of eventually take over us, and it's making, if our muscles are not needed and our brains are not needed, then why are we needed as a species, right?
We're cute.
It can become cuter now. I mean, we have humanoids.
That's right.
So with consciousness there, now we have, we have these AI models which are actually lying, which is a next level of cognitive behavior. So, that is one element. But the other element is, like we've seen with the rest of the technology, human beings are quite tenacious creatures. We'll come to terms with that. And we'll come up with boundaries to better global life. And I tend to be more on the optimistic side. I think there are many humps in our, if you look at our history that we've gone through, where certain part of the society, certain societies have gotten distinct advantage. It lasted for a few years. For instance, a lot of weapons, a lot of technology, if you see, the society had swords, other had stakes, then people started having guns, and the other society didn't have guns and weapons. But slowly it permeated. Slowly everybody. So I think we are going through that path, and I believe that from what I've seen around DeepSeek and adoption across the globe, and it's a global adoption, I believe, I went to 11, the interesting thing is, like in the last 3 weeks, I've been to 11 countries. And in every country, this is the debate that is happening. So the interesting thing is they're all at the same stage. We're all, as a human society, we're all at the same, we're all grappling with the same question. And I think we'll eventually come with the most optimal solution, which is to collaborate.
On that somewhat optimistic note, we'll leave it there. Sajjad Syed, thank you for joining us. Rebecca Fannin, Rui Ma, we appreciate the conversation today. Thank you for joining us.